Okay, it's November 15th, 5:58 p.m. The big news today is that the Federal Reserve is launching the BEAST system, central bank digital currency, that will track everybody's purchases and will be part of sorry about that, be part of the UBI, the Universal Basic Income. That's the plan, and it's being implemented starting today at 12 major banks. Uh, Citibank, HSBC, BNY Mellon, MasterCard, PNC Bank, TD Bank, Truist, US Bank, and Wells Fargo will be participating in the pilot by issuing tokens and settling transactions through simulated central bank reserves. Simulated is where we are. We're in a simulated reality, a virtual reality, and we'll become shadow people inside this fictional virtual reality world. But we'll be happy, according to Klaus Schwab, and we'll own nothing. Anyway, there's two options. You can either be part of that system, that's the beast system, or you can be part of the God, Jesus Christ system and the Bible, where all of this is outlined. It's all in Scripture that in the end times there will be the rise of Antichrist. And this is what's happening on Mount Sinai. So I'm like not an old time me Christian believer. I was a Catholic. I went through all the Buddhist and Hindu and, mystery religions and the hippies days and the beatnik days and the LSD days and all of that. And then I began to understand by reading and reading the Bible that the Bible prophecies are uncannily accurate. And in praying to God, I was having the visions that I'd always had being confirmed, and my being able to see that Christ is real and being able to see that there actually is a spiritual reality that is quite specific, and it's clearly laid out in the Bible, but it also demands a lot of things, which is why very few people want to be on that narrow path of self-sacrifice and denying the ego. And the one thing they don't want to do is pick up the cross. They don't want to pick up Christ's cross. So it's very understandable to me that they don't want to get off the pleasure cruise. And they think they can have their cake and eat it too. They think they can have their desserts and their appetizers and their cocktails and their 3 martini lunches and their big bank accounts and their house in the Hamptons and still be Christians. Just not possible. I've had so many, people that keep telling me the same old BS that, all you have to do is faith without works is dead, is what James says, but we disregard that one. We go with Paul, saying that all it is grace and faith. That's true, except he's not talking about mouthing a few words. Faith means practicing self-denial, practicing leaving family, leaving mother and father, son and daughter, because those who don't aren't worthy of him. Faith means being able to move mountains. Faith means being able to withstand torture and being able to withstand imprisonment and standing up to all of this phony Christianity where everybody's a Christian. All you have to do is, it doesn't matter. That's the one world religion where everybody's nicey nice, everybody's good, everybody's going to heaven. Just isn't in the Bible. I wish it were true, but it's not. And to say that it is it's just a big easy ride. It's the big easy. And it's not easy at all. It wasn't easy for Jesus. It wasn't worth what wasn't what was the experience of any of his disciples. They all were martyred except for John. And look at what John went through with the revelation. That is seeing all of the end of the world. People say, "Oh, he was a madman and he was insane, and it's really horrific, and no kind of God would be, kill millions of people and have a blood sword and pestilences and famines and the rule of this terrain." Well, I'm afraid that we're seeing it, so there is a God that would do that. We're seeing these satanic ritual abuse and sex slaves and torture. So I'm afraid that that's, to pretend this is like a Disney World God or a Santa Claus God or a Snoopy's Christmas God, it is just to live in a fantasy world. And this is the tribulation period, and it's time to see that the war is we're in a fantasy world over in Ukraine, thinking that Russia is going to be defeated when all that is happening is all the news that's negative, so-called negative, is being silenced. Zelensky's not letting even CNN, which doesn't report the news anyway, but just inadvertently they might show something, go into Kherson. There's something will be caught on camera that they don't censor out, like the Nazi Azov Brigade that showed up on CNN. The censors missed it. It's just like the NBC report on what's his name, Pelosi. And then the Pelosi report was that he went back to the guy with the hammer after calling the police, meaning, the guy with the hammer is somebody he knew and who came into the house. So NBC just scrubs that from the site. That's what continues to go on as we see it one day in the Orwellian way, then it's down the memory hole. And anybody who reports it from NBC is their like gateway pundit, their right-wing, vast right-wing conspiracy. So anything that doesn't just repeat like a parrot, whatever the news, and this is both sides. It's both sides. It's Fox, it's Forbes, it's The Economist, it's all the right wing, it's New York Post, it's MSNBC, it's Saturday Night Live. Basically, nobody's reporting the reality of, except for some very few intrepid, honest reporters like Clayton Morris and Natalie Morris on Redacted, any number of others, and foreign news services like TFI Global are reporting exactly why the Ukraine war is over. It's been over for quite a while. The Kherson offensive that's a desperation move. They're just trying to blow up a nuclear reactor. They blow up a hydroelectric plant. They blow up gas pipelines. And then they call Russia war criminals if they launch a counterattack. So we're in a virtual reality insanity, along with this cryptocurrency that I'll just say a word about that. That was a huge scam. It was just a slush fund to funnel money into the Democratic Party's pockets, meaning that they have to control the media machinery and this insane war that's bankrupting the American people. We're broke, beyond broke, in terms of reality check. So the Fed is just hyperinflating the dollar, and that's what will happen is the dollar is collapsing, and it'll be taken out of, just like in Weimar Germany or Argentina or Venezuela. And then you'll have this cryptocurrency, meaning crypt, encryption, dead. We're a dead people, we're dead souls. The wages of sin is death. Money is Baal worship. So God sees all of this. He has said this in the Bible, that these would be like the days of Noah. And it would be worse for the people in these cities like Las Vegas and San Francisco and New York and Washington, D.C. than it was in the time of Sodom and Gomorrah. That we are flagrantly mocking God in every conceivable way with having Alice Cooper type Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, death metal groups play in Christian churches and say, all we have to do is say all they do is say they're Christians. I saw, I'm not, I like Alice Cooper. What the heck? He's a nice guy. But to say the problem is he's not a Christian. And so to say he's a Christian is to be deceiving people and just thinking this is Christianity. You can have dead babies and have boa constrictors and serpents and guillotine yourself and be just cross-dressing and be alcoholic or a drug addict or any of these things, and Jesus still loves you. No, that's not the way it works. You don't live a life of sexual debauchery and rock and roll, and then on your deathbed say, well, I wish I'd been more like Jesus, but I know you forgive me. Like Bill Clinton is forgiven, and Bill Gates is forgiven, and all the people that are doing things that are unspeakable. That's the worst thing to me about this notion that faith is all you need, that you don't have to have any works. Lest you boast. I don't see anybody they're still boasting. Have you noticed that Kenneth Copeland is a little bit of boastful attitude about, here's the Kenneth Copeland Network with Lance Wallnau and Mario Murillo, and all they do is boast. Kenneth, and not only both boast, but they declare a triumph of Donald Trump even after he's lost the election. Then they create this with Trump, this fiasco on January 6th, rather than just accepting that, yeah, the election's stolen or not stolen. You don't create that kind of street situation that can blow up into violence. You just go ahead and go through the legal channels. This isn't not Christ-like behavior. And then you have them there, the egomaniacs on stage, big pictures of themselves, and Kenneth Copeland is a 33-degree Mason. Sorry, T.D. Jakes, a 33-degree Mason. That Jesuit Pope is a Jesuit. There is a beast system, and it goes back to the ancient Illuminati of Egypt and through the mystery religions and through the pagan religions and the occult religions. All of those practices that are strictly forbidden in the Old Testament, and the Old Testament hasn't been rescinded, even though Andy Stanley told everybody, and all the other Protestant churches have told everybody. That's what Alan G. White of the Seventh-day Adventists predicted, and it's come to pass that these churches are going to become just as heretical as the Catholic Church was, that Martin Luther nailed his theses to the church door. I don't know what to say else. Let me, I can go on preaching to everybody. Let me see what else is happening today. The cryptocurrency thing is big. That's so many pension funds, like the Teachers Fund in Ontario, is invested in it. I imagine that's what I heard reported from Canada. So there goes their pensions. This happens with Madoff. This happened with Enron. This happened, countless times in the past, like Teapot Dome scandals, and you just go back to the Great Depression. You go back to the '08 crisis with all these mortgage companies that never got penalized, and banks that never got penalized because Barack Obama came in, covered it all up, and they've shot it all the way back up now to with all of these dummy corporations, like how many cryptocurrencies run out of some guy's basement. Typically, I mean, he's out in the Bahamas with his snake oil show. Even Elon Musk didn't want to go near this guy. He can tell a charlatan because being a charlatan himself, he knows how the game works. And Elon Musk, okay, here's his Baphomet symbol with the upside down cross and his Roman emperor. You know, so who is he? That's the head of the beast system. It's all integrated through the 1%, through the World Economic Forum. This is like so glaringly, if anybody's read scripture or studied it like I have for years and years and years, at this point, you know, that's why I believe it. I didn't believe it when I hadn't studied it, when I hadn't even messed around being Catholic or coming back into the Catholic Church through all these mystics, you know, the Thomas Mertons and the Thomas Keatings. If anybody's familiar with Meister Eckhart and Eckhart Tolle and all this stuff, it's charlatanism. Alan Watts was a charlatan. He was an alcoholic. He said he was a charlatan. If he says it, wouldn't you believe him? What are the fruits of Alan Watts exactly? Besides the whole LSD, John Lennon, you know, Yoko Ono debacle, which you see playing out right now. These are the fruits of Alan Watts. It's virtual reality meltdown with kids that are 42% of kids are mentally ill now. I wonder why that is. Well, it's because they don't know what sex they are. Because we have a debauched teachers' unions that teach them that white people, like their parents, are racists if they're white. So black kids get the same message, and Hispanics get the message. Why aren't Hispanics racist? I mean, they're the ones that's knocked off the Mayans and knocked off, you know, according to Neil Young. So, but why aren't the Native Americans who were preying on the Hopis, who once they got horses and they became a military empire, the Comanches and the Sioux, why aren't they racist? Because they were taking slaves and they were torturing women and children and sacrificing them and scalping them and all these things. Oh, they didn't do it in the numbers because it was an Aboriginal society and they didn't have the technology, but they certainly were taking slaves, and just like everyone else in Africa or around the world. And what are we talking about? What white people? You know, you're just that's racist. What isn't, you know, what about the Asian people? What about the Chinese? And the Japanese? I mean, weren't the Japanese a little brutal to the Chinese in Shanghai? You don't think that was racist? You know, everybody is racist once they're in some kind of turf war, in a prison or in a gang wars to have turf in New York City or Chicago. It's all this kind of mind game, you know, of stereotyping and using archetypes and cliches so people are pitted against each other. And the Christians are the ones being persecuted now in China, and the Christians are persecuted here because there's this notion that they're all the same. You know, I don't have anything to do with most Christians myself. I don't have anything in common with most Christians any more than I have in common with most Buddhists or Hindus or anything else. So we're not going to see each other by just who we are. Like to get to know what you believe or think and find out, you know, as a Christian, I'm nonviolent. That's why I've opposed all the wars. unlike my other Christian brothers that are not my Christian brothers, because they are violating the law of God, and so is the Pope, so are the religions gathered under his warlike call for a one world order. How are you going to have a new world order without these millions of people dying? Because we have to rid the planet of useless eaters, as they're called by Yuval Noah Harari. This is the time of tribulation. We're at the end times. With the banking system collapsing and people losing their houses and people living out in the streets and people in madness and satanic ritual abuse going on in the churches, in the government, in the Clinton madhouse and Epstein madhouse. They're worse than madhouses. They're torture chambers, and that's something that is mischaracterized as being mental illness. It's demonic possession. You see it in these confessions in prisons and in dungeons and in rock and roll interviews with Bob Dylan, when he says he sold his soul to the devil. And you see it in Jimmy Page with his Thelemite religion and David Bowie. It's all real. That's my experience, and that's what I've seen. So if other people don't want to believe it, then they're risking falling into it and it being in it permanently and going into it, hell for eternity. It's in the other religions as well. There's a Buddhist in Boulder that had a near-death experience and experienced being in hell, just like I've experienced on LSD or not on LSD. And there is the book that this guy did, but I don't think he's saved either, because it's just, I don't know what happened with this guy. I should check, do a update for myself at least. I mean, that's what I saw when I was out in Boulder, and I saw out in Denver and out in Albuquerque with Breaking Bad, and which is where the Epstein Ranch is, and the Bill Richardsons are out there, and the Bill we were just out there for what? Oh, it's a business. Yeah, you had to go out to the Epstein Ranch. You couldn't have it at the governor's mansion. So who believes all this stuff? But apparently people who still vote for them, you know. So this is a nightmare time. And I pray for everybody that I can have some connection to the ones that are thinking that it's lots of fun and it goes on, you know, till you die, and then everything, and then it's just black, and there's nothing after that. Because how you behave on earth has everything to do with what your afterlife is going to be. And it also has to do with what your later life is going to be. If you think that it's going to be a pleasant memories, you know, it's not. It's not pleasant memories now, is it? I hope not. All right, it's not. They won't. My memories of the past aren't pleasant at all. My memories of the past with you know, drug use and all of that are not pleasant memories. Anybody telling you that, I think is just they're delusional. They're delusional. And they're trying to sell you something that is empty. God bless everybody.